Imagine standing under the blazing sun of the desert, the sand swirling around your feet as distant echoes of mourning fill the air. Who was Yazid, the man whose name still sends shivers down the spine of millions of Muslims around the world? Why does his legacy inspire curses instead of prayers? Today we journey back in time to uncover the shocking reasons behind the curses on Yazid's name. We'll trace the steps that led to one of the most tragic events in Islamic history, dissecting political intrigue, familial conflict, and moral collapse. His name appears in history books, sermons, and elegies, always accompanied by anger and sorrow. Yet many know only fragments of the story. By the end of this video, you will have a clear picture of why Yazid's rule is remembered with such pain and outrage. Yazid ibn Muawiya ascended to power in 680 CE as the second caliph of the Umayyad dynasty, following his father Muawiya's controversial reign. Unlike the rightly guided caliphs before him, Yazid's leadership was marked by accusations of impiety, greed, and brutality. While his supporters saw him as a stabilizing force in a fractured empire, his critics viewed his rule as a betrayal of Islamic principles. Over the centuries, historians have debated whether Yazid was a ruthless tyrant or a capable ruler faced with impossible challenges. In both Sunni and Shia traditions, his name is inseparable from the tragedy at Karbala. This tragic event lies at the heart of why Muslims continue to curse Yazid's name to this day. Born into the powerful Umayyad family in Damascus, Yazid spent his youth surrounded by luxury and privilege. He received a refined education, learning horseback riding, poetry, and the art of governance from seasoned statesmen. Yet the opulence of the Umayyad court also exposed him to vices that later fueled his critics' claims of moral decline. While the early Muslim community had championed modesty and piety, Yazid's court sparkled with jewels, banquets, and worldly entertainments. Some reports suggest that he favored alcohol and music, practices frowned upon by many devout Muslims of his era. These early impressions would shape public opinion, making it harder for him to prove his sincerity when crises emerged. When Muawiya decided to secure his legacy, he broke with earlier traditions by naming Yazid as his successor, a move unprecedented in Islamic history. Instead of leaving the choice to the community's leaders, Muawiya demanded oaths of allegiance to Yazid. This act of hereditary succession clashed with the model set by Prophet Muhammad and the first four rightly guided caliphs who were chosen through consultation. Many viewed this as a political maneuver to preserve Umayyad power rather than a decision rooted in Islamic guidance. By prioritizing bloodline over consensus, Muawiya sowed the seeds of dissent that would haunt Yazid's reign from the very start. Once in power, Yazid attempted to consolidate his rule through ceremonies, gifts, and public displays of loyalty. He hosted grand festivals in Damascus, inviting tribal leaders and scholars to pledge their support. At the same time, he sent governors to distant provinces to enforce allegiance. Though these tactics secured broad recognition, they did little to address growing unease. Many questioned whether a ruler so invested in pomp could truly serve the spiritual and moral needs of the Muslim community. As whispers of rebellion spread, Yazid's reputation suffered, painting him as more concerned with his image than the principles of justice and equality. In the holy city of Medina, leaders from the Prophet's family and the Ansar felt betrayed by Yazid's accession. They believed that the caliphate should reflect the community's piety and service, not merely a dynasty's ambition. Among them stood Hussein ibn Ali, the Prophet's grandson, known for his integrity and spiritual depth. Hussein had enjoyed widespread respect, his lineage tracing directly to Muhammad, peace be upon him. When envoys from Kufa in modern-day Iraq sent urgent letters asking Hussein to lead them against Yazid's rule, he faced a momentous decision: uphold familial loyalty or protect the ideals of justice that defined early Islam. Hussein's choice to leave Medina was not taken lightly. He prayed for guidance, reflecting on the Quranic call, "O you who believe, be persistently standing firm in justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it be against yourselves." Quran 4:135. Despite warnings of danger, he set out with a small caravan of family and loyal companions toward Kufa. Each step northward carried both hope and uncertainty. The couriers who summoned him had promised enthusiastic support, yet some voices in Kufa warned that Yazid's soldiers had already infiltrated the city. Still, Hussein trusted in God's plan, determined to stand for truth even if that path led to sacrifice. As the caravan moved across the unforgiving desert, word reached Yazid's court. Alarmed by the prospect of a challenge to his authority, Yazid dispatched an army under command of Umar ibn Sa'd to intercept Hussein before he could rally support in Kufa. The soldiers raced across the sands, their banners fluttering under the scorching sun. When Hussein's group neared the plain of Karbala, they found themselves surrounded by a much larger force. Cut off from water sources and trapped between the arid land and the armed camp, the small band of believers faced a dire predicament. Yet Hussein refused to abandon his stance. During the long, scorching afternoon, Hussein's camp watched helplessly as the Euphrates banks fell into enemy control. Denied access to water, the women and children endured unbearable thirst. Hussein himself negotiated calmly, pleading for basic human rights. Yet the commanders refused. In that moment, the harsh realities of power became painfully clear. Political expediency overrode compassion, and a man's lineage mattered less than a dynasty's grip. The scene at Karbala, ever etched in collective memory, symbolized the clash between ideals and tyranny. When the sun rose on the 10th day, Ashura, Hussein donned his green cloak and stepped out alone to face the enemy's fiercest warriors. His small band of companions followed suit, each ready to lay down their life rather than submit to injustice. The battle that ensued was brutal and one-sided. Hussein's supporters fought valiantly, but the numbers were overwhelmingly against them. By afternoon, only Hussein and a handful of his closest friends remained. In those final moments, he stood as a beacon of resistance, reciting prayers for mercy even as arrows pierced his body. His last words spoke of unwavering faith in God's justice. Eyewitness accounts describe the horror that followed. The women and children left unprotected were taken captive. The bodies of the martyrs were left exposed under the blazing sun. Among the few who survived was Hussein's sister Zainab, whose courage in the aftermath inspired countless elegies. She confronted Yazid's envoys in Damascus, denouncing their cruelty before the caliphal court. Her speeches ignited outrage across the empire, turning a local tragedy into a symbol of universal resistance against oppression. Through her voice, the memory of Karbala lived on. As news of the massacre spread, Muslim scholars and poets took up their pens. Lamentations filled the air and gatherings of mourning began. The tragedy at Karbala became woven into the fabric of Muslim culture, commemorated each year with solemn rituals. For Shia Muslims, Ashura remains the day of deepest grief, a time to remember Hussein's sacrifice and curse Yazid for his role in that crime. But even many Sunni scholars acknowledged the enormity of the injustice. The jurist Ibn al-Mubarak lamented that no ruler should exceed the limits set by God, and others questioned whether Yazid's caliphate could ever be deemed legitimate. The Quran lays down a clear mandate for justice. Allah commands you to render trusts to whom they are due, and when you judge between people, to judge with justice. Quran 4:58. Yazid's actions at Karbala, leaving a small family to suffer and die, flew in the face of this divine command. While no verse names him directly, the principle of protecting the vulnerable stands starkly opposed to his choices. Muslim thinkers over the centuries have invoked such verses to argue that true leadership must reflect compassion, integrity, and service. Prophet Muhammad warned his followers, "Help your brother, whether he is an oppressor or he is oppressed." When asked how one could help an oppressor, the Prophet replied, "By preventing him from oppressing others." Sahih al-Bukhari. This teaching echoes through the ages. Genuine loyalty to faith demands standing against wrongdoing, even if it means opposing a powerful ruler. Yazid's reign tested this principle, forcing believers to choose between outward allegiance and inner conviction. Those who refused to accept his authority paid the ultimate price. Sunni historians like al-Tabari recorded mixed views of Yazid. Some described him as generous to friends but harsh to adversaries. Others questioned his moral fitness, especially in light of Karbala. While later Umayyad caliphs downplayed the tragedy, Sunni scholars of ethics and law used it as a warning. No political goal justifies the massacre of innocents. The historian Ibn Kathir noted that Yazid's reputation never recovered, saying that his name became synonymous with cruelty. Shia tradition elevated Hussein's martyrdom into the central narrative of faith. Majlis gatherings, elegiac poetry, and passion plays reenact the events each year. Yazid is cast as the archetypal villain, cursed and condemned in sermons worldwide. Even some Sunni communities observe Ashura with solemn remembrance, recognizing in Hussein's stand a universal call to justice. Through collective memory, the name Yazid became more than a historical figure. It became a symbol of tyranny against which all righteous people must stand. In the realms of literature, art, and film, Karbala has inspired countless works. Epic poems recount the final moments of Hussein and his companions. Paintings depict the martyr's last gaze toward the heavens. Modern filmmakers from Iran to Lebanon have brought the desert battlefield to life on screen. Each portrayal reinforces the emotional power of that event, reminding audiences that a single man's refusal to bow to unjust rule can echo across centuries. Today, when Muslims hear the name Yazid, they recall not just a ruler but a warning. Power without righteousness leads to catastrophe. His story reminds us that leadership demands more than inheritance or force. It demands compassion for the weak, fairness in judgment, and humility before God. When we speak his name with scorn, we reaffirm our commitment to the values that distinguish Islam at its best. As we reflect on Yazid's legacy and Hussein's sacrifice, we see that the past still speaks to our present. In every corner of the world, when people rise against oppression, they echo the call of Karbala. The curses on Yazid's name are not about personal hatred, but a collective vow, never to accept tyranny and always to stand for justice. May we carry that lesson in our hearts, seeking truth and mercy in all our actions. Ultimately, the shocking reason Muslims curse Yazid is not mere tradition, but the moral clarity born from Karbala's tragedy. His choices stand in stark contrast to the teachings of the Quran and the example of the Prophet, peace be upon him. By remembering this history, we honor the spirit of Hussein ibn Ali and renew our pledge to justice. Let the memory of Karbala guide us to protect the oppressed, to speak truth to power, and to ensure that tyranny never triumphs over faith.